We will now introduce Lesson 20, Introduction to the Volitional Mood. Verbs that express or appeal to the will, volition, are said to be in the volitional mood. In contrast to the indicative mood, the volitional mood expresses the desire or wish for action to occur. And the first of the volitional moods that we'll look at will be the imperative. The imperative only occurs in the second person form. It gives a command. And so here you have pakad in the imperatival forms. Pakod gives the command appoint, addressing an individual guy. And then pikd commands a woman to appoint. And then pikdu would be a group that would include at least some guys, commanding a group to appoint. And then pakodna would be a feminine plural group and telling them appoint. Now, when you compare these imperatival forms with the imperfect forms, you'll see that the way that it actually works is if you take the imperfect form, you will appoint, tifkod, and drop the T, you get the imperative form. Same thing with the second feminine singular. If you take tifkadi and then drop the T, well, the problem there would be that you'd have two shavas in a row, but then by rule of shava you would get a hirik. And so, again, if you drop the T, you end up with pikd. And then same thing with the second feminine plural, drop the T, and turn the second masculine plural, drop the T, and apply the rule of shava, and you get pikdu. And if you drop the T here, you get pakodna. So basically, if you know your imperatival forms by heart and drop the T, you can work out the imperatival form from the second person imperfect forms. Same thing would be true of an A-class imperfect. So you will lie down for shakav is tishkab. Drop the T, you get shakab with that same A vowel that you see in the imperfect. So it will follow that same pattern, same way with tishma, you will listen. Shma becomes addressing an individual, listen. And on down the list. Now, there is an alternative second masculine singular imperative that uses a kamatse. And so the imperative here would be pokda. Pokda is equivalent to pakod. Or in the case of shakav, it would be shikba, shikva, and that is the same as shakav. So there's two different second masculine singular imperatival forms. Generally, you would translate the imperative as a direct command, emphasis being on immediate response, though some contexts demand a less forceful meaning. For example, when you give a command to God, It's expressing more of a request, as in a prayer, than it is giving God commands as if you can tell God what to do. Now, another volitional mood is the jussive. The jussive is a form of the imperfect. At least for a strong verb, it'll be identical in form with the imperfect. The difference is the meaning. With the imperfect, yifkod means he will appoint. But it can be used as a jussive, which would mean let him appoint, or may he appoint, expressing not a prediction but a wish. Same thing with yifkodu, they will appoint, could equally well mean let them appoint, or may they appoint. The precise translation of a jussive depends on the relationship between the speaker and the subject of the verb. The translation options may be arranged into two groups. Jussives expressing a wish, a desire, or a request. The volitional idea is expressed by one who is inferior to the subject of the verb. And there the wish, for example, with God would be, may the Lord visit you. Yifkod Adonai Otka. May the Lord visit you. On the other hand, jussives can almost express a command or instruction, and the volitional idea is expressed by one who is superior to the subject of the verb. So Yahi or, when God says in Genesis 1, let there be light, it's not just a wish, may there be light, I wish there were light, but it's almost the effect of a command, let there be light. But both are jussives in meaning. Now, another kind of jussive, as it were, a special kind, is with the first person, and these are given a distinct name, the coordinative. The volitional mood in the first person is a coordinative. The form of the coordinative may be identical to the imperfect first common singular and first common plural forms. That is, sometimes just the regular first person imperfects have a coordinative type meaning. But in most instances, it will be marked with a kamatz he. So if you take the form I will appoint, F-code, add a kamatz he to it, reduce the vowel in the process, you'll end up with F-kada, and this is going to be translated something like, let me appoint. Now, seen in the examples that follow, the coordinative may be understood as expressing either a request, let me or let us, or resolve, I will, or we will. The plural coordinative may at times carry the force of a exhortation, let us, but the force of the coordinative does not always get reflected in the translation, especially since English usage has not retained the distinction between shall and will. So the example here, the imperfect is F-code, I shall appoint, but F-kada would mean I will appoint or let me appoint. Nif-code, we shall appoint, but the coordinative form nif-kada is we will appoint or let us appoint or let's appoint. So that's the coordinative expressing a wish in first person. Then there is particle na. The particle na may accompany a volitional form written either independently or joined with a makef. The presence of this particle signals a volitive form, but it may not require any major emphasis in translation. The older versions translated it please or now or even I pray, but often it may be just best to leave it untranslated. So here you have kavots na et ha giborim, gather, and then direct object marker, the warriors. And the na does mark what it's connected to is volitional. It probably adds some emphasis to it. So by itself, kavots would mean gather the warriors, but the na would make it a little more emphatic, and hence, please gather the warriors, or I pray thee, use King James English, you gather the warriors, or the like. But it's not a real strong particle. Now it turns out that coordinatives and gessives are negated by a different negative than low. It is negated by al. Al is followed by the gessive or the coordinative. So if you want to say, let us not appoint, it would be al nikada. Or let him not appoint, it would be al nifkod. The imperative does not appear with these negative adverbs. To give a negative command, actually, you need to take either al or lo and apply it to a imperfect. Either al plus adjussive or lo plus a imperfect. Now, since there are two different ways of giving a negative command, there does seem to be a slight distinction between the two. Lo plus the imperfect seems to be a bit stronger to give a more general prohibition. So in the Ten Commandments, it'll use lo, tirtzah, you shall not commit murder. That's a general prohibition. Whereas al plus a second person gessive would mean that you're not to do it, at least not right now. So al tisrof oto, do not burn it, doesn't mean that you can't burn it at certain times, but don't do it at this time under these circumstances or the like. Now that said, the two commands overlap, and there's not as strong a distinction as this rule might suggest in my experience. But nonetheless, where there is a distinction, lo is the stronger negation. Now, when the particle na appears with a al, it's frequently joined by a makef, al na tiktov, do not write. And again, the na is adding a little emphasis. Oh, do not write. That would be another way you might bring that out. Well, we'll continue this on the next video.